Alright everyone, how is it going? Today's subject is the Sega Genesis console. That's what we're going to be going through today. Let's get right on into it. Sega Genesis is a pretty good console. Overall, I have the Sega Genesis collection, which you can see right up here. But I have it for the Xbox One, actually. So I played most of the games, but it's time to actually see, what's going on. I better get some. It's gonna be a little bit. Like I said, this is our sixth episode of Game Collectors. Second, we're gonna go through all the Sega consoles, including handhelds and add-ons. So, buckle up, cause we're gonna have a good one today. Alright, the Sega Genesis is known as the Mega Drive outside North America. Alright, restart. The Sega Genesis, known as the Mega Drive outside North America, is a 16-bit fourth-generation home video game console. Sega's third console and successor to the Master System, which we talked about last video. Sega released it as the Mega Drive in Japan in 1988, and later as the Genesis in North America in 1989. In 1999, it was distributed as the Mega Drive by Virgin Mastertronic. In Europe, Ubisoft, not Ubisoft, Ubisoft in Australia, and Tectoy in Brazil. In South Korea, it was distributed by Samsung as a Super Game Asterisk Boy, and later as a Super Aladdin Boy. Alright, so manufacturer was Sega. Type was a home video game console. Generation was now the fourth generation. The release date was in Japan as the Mega Drive, October 29th, 1988. North America, August 14th, 1989. Korea as the Super Asterisk Game Boy, August 1990. PAL regions, aka Africa and China and stuff, September 9th, 1990. And Brazil, September 1st, 1990. Lifespan was 1988 to 1997. That was the lifespan run by Sega, the company. Then Majesco took it over from 1998 to 1999. It was discontinued worldwide in 1997 by Sega, and North America in 1999 by Majesco Entertainment. It sold 30.75 million units, and Sega sold 30.75 million units with it, and Majesco sold 1.5 million. It uses a ROM cartridge. Obviously, the predecessor was the Master System. Alright, in the early 1980s, this is the history of the Sega Genesis. And, okay. You ready? Is it okay? Alright, this is history, and now we're at development. In the early 1980s, Sega Enterprises Incorporated, then a subsidiary of Gulf Plus Western, was one of the top 5 arcade game manufacturers active in the United States, as the company revenue surpassed $200 million between July 1981 and June 1982. A downturn in the arcade business started in 1982 seriously hurt the company, leading Gulf Plus Western to sell its North American arcade manufacturing organization and the licensing rights for its arcade games to Bally Manufacturing. The company retained Sega's North American R&D operation, as well as its Japanese subsidiary, Sega Enterprises Ltd., with its arcade business in decline. Sega Enterprises Ltd. President Heio Nakayama advocated that the company leverage its hardware expertise to move into the home console market in Japan, which was in its infancy at the time. Nakayama received permission to proceed with his project, arranging the release of the Sega's first home video game system, the SG-100. In 1986, Sega redesigned the Mark III for release in North America as the Master System. This was followed by a European release in the next year. In 1987, Sega faced another threat in its console business. The Japanese computer giant NEC released the PC Engine and made great publicity. To remain competitive against the two more established consumer electronic companies, Ishikawa and his team decided they needed to incorporate a 16-bit microprocessor in their new system to make an impact in the marketplace, and once again turned to Sega's strengths in the arcade industry to adapt the successful Sega System 16 arcade board into the agriculture for a home console. The decision to use Motorola 6800 as the system's main CPU was made late in development, while a Idawg Z80 was used as a secondary CPU to handle the sound due to fears that the load to main the CPU would be too great if it handled both the visuals and audio. The console was announced in 1988 issue of Japanese gaming magazine Beep as the Mark V, aka the Mark V, but Sega management wanted a stronger name. After reviewing more than 300 proposals, the company settled on Mega Drive in North America, and the name was changed to Genesis. No, in North America, the name was changed to Genesis. Alright, Rosen said he insisted on the name as he disliked Mega Drive and wanted to represent a new beginning for Sega. Sato said some design elements changed. Are we still good? My computer shut off because it was getting a little bit sleepy there. We'll have to keep it going. I'll have to remember that. Okay. Wanted to represent a new beginning for Sato said some design elements changed, such as the gold color 16-bit wording, because it was believed that the color would be mistaken for yellow. He believes that the changes in design are representative of the differences in values between Japanese and American culture. Sounds good to me. So, as you can see here, we have some pictures of the Sega Genesis right here. That's a Sega Genesis menu, which just watched a little bit ago, but Sega Genesis and stuff, overall, looks like a pretty good console. There's overall, it looks good, really good. I'll get some grape juice here. Energy drink. So now we're up to the launch part of everything, and we're going to see how it launches and if it does pretty good at launch. Alright, the Sega released the Mega Drive in Japan on October 29th, 1988, though the launch of was overshadowed by, of course, Nintendo's release of Super Mario Bros. 3 a week earlier. Positive coverage from the magazines Famitsuyo and Beep helped it to establish a following. But Sega only managed to ship 400,000 units in the first year. In order to increase sales, Sega released various games, including an online banking system and answering machine called the Sega Mega Answer. Nevertheless, the Mega Drive was unable to overtake the venerable Famicom and remained a distant third in Japan behind Super Famicom and NEC's PC Engine throughout the 16-bit era. Sega announced a North American release date for the system on January 9th, 1989. At the time, Sega did not possess a North American sales and marketing organization and was distributing its Master System through Tonka. Dissatisfied with Tonka's performance, as we learned in the last one, Sega looked for a new partner to market the Genesis in North America, and offered the rights to Atari Corporation, which did not yet have a 16-bit system. David Rosen made the proposal to Atari CEO Jack Trammell and the president of Atari's Entertainment Electronics Division, Michael Katz. Trammell declined to acquire the new console, deeming it too expensive, and instead opted to focus on the Atari ST, a PC. So, as we know, the Atari's, just shortly after this, Atari went out of business in Atari went out of making home consoles, right? So, you gotta think, what if they took the Sega Genesis, and it does have $30 million, that definitely could have, saved them. They could have maybe stayed in the business for a little bit, but, you never know. Alright, Sega decided to launch the console through its own Sega of America subsidiary, which executed a limited launch on October 14th, 1989 in New York City and Los Angeles. The Genesis was released in the rest of North America later that year. Alright, the European version was released in September 1990 at a price of 189.99 francs, which release was handheld by Virgin Mastertronic, which was later purchased by Sega in 1991, and became Sega of Europe games like Space Harrier, Ghouls and Ghosts, Golden Axe, Super Thunderblade, and The Revenge of Shinoboy were available at stores at launch. The best console was also bundled with Altered Beast. The Mega Drive and its first batch of games were shown at the 1990 European Computer Entertainment Show, ECES, in Earl's Court, between July and August 1990. Virgin initially placed their order for 20,000 Mega Drive units. However, the company increased the order by 10,000 units when advanced orders had exceeded expectations. Another 10,000 units were later added following the console's success at ECES event. The projected number of units to be sold between September and December 1990 had eventually increased to 40,000 units in the United Kingdom alone. Other companies assisted in distributing the console to various countries worldwide. Ozisoft handled the Mega Drive's launch and marketing in Australia, as it had done before with the Master System. In Brazil, the Mega Drive was released by Tectoy in 1990, only a year after the Brazilian release of the Master System. Tectoy produced games exclusively for the Brazilian market and brought the Sega Meganet online service there in 1995. In India, Sega entered a distribution deal with Shaw Wallace in April 1994 in order to circumvent 80% import tariff, with each unit selling for $18,000 in Indian cash. I don't know what you call it. If I got some people from India watching in the comments, if they're somehow miraculously turned out. So, bunny trailer here, but comments got turned off. I didn't even show my face because they usually get showed off and they're like, oh, it's a kid. But I thought maybe I didn't even say anything. So maybe they know I sound like a kid. So maybe I thought maybe if I make my voice some more masculine, they won't know. But I decided not to do that because then I get dislikes. So I figured I'd just sacrifice the comments rather than dislikes overall. The last video actually got a lot of attention. So these videos are doing pretty good. Episode 6, like I said, we're shooting for 17 or 18 episodes of this season. But anyways, continuing on. Alright, make sure that you're not going to fall asleep here, Mr. Computer. Alright, Samsung handled sales and distribution in Korea, where it was named the Super Game Asterisk Boy, and retained the Mega Drive logo alongside the Samsung name. It was later renamed the Super Aladdin Boy, whatever. Wow, okay. Obviously, they could not have the E because there was a original Game Boy out at that time by the man who themselves, Nintendo. What's going on over there? Okay. For the North American market, former Atari Corporation Entertainment Electronics Division President and new Sega of America CEO, Michael Katz, instituted a two-part approach to build sales in the region. This is North America, by the way. The first part involved a marketing campaign to challenge Nintendo head-on and emphasize the more arcade-like experience available on the Genesis, summarized by slogans including "Genesis does what Nintendo don't." There we go. Since Nintendo owned the console rights to most arcade games of the time, the second part involved creating a library of instantly recognizable games, which used the names and likeness of celebrities and athletes such as Pat Riley basketball, Arnold Palmer tournament golf, James Buster Douglas knockout boxing, Joe Montana football, Tommy Lasorda baseball, Mario Lemieux hockey, and Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. So they literally got one of the most popular people at that time, Michael Literal Jackson. I'm gonna move my computer up here. Michael Literal Jackson. To come on over to Sega. So that's pretty close for them. Alright, nothing less. It had a hard time overcoming Nintendo's ubiquitous presence in consumers' homes. Tasked by Nakayama to sell 1 million units within the first year, Cats and Sega of America only managed to sell 500K. Oof! In mid-1990, Nakayama hired Tom Kalinske to replace Katz as CEO of America. Although Kalinske... Of course my dog has to bark. Of course. I'll spare you having to... I'll spare you having to listen to it. Okay, I pushed the wrong one. Alright, we're back. Alright, so in mid-1990, Nakayama hired Tom Kalinske to replace Katz as CEO of Sega of America. Although Kalinske initially knew little about the video game market, he surrounded himself with industry-savvy advisors. A believer in the razor and blades business model, he developed a 4-point plan: cut the price of the console, create a US-based team to develop games targeted at the American market, continue and expand the aggressive advertising campaigns, and replace the bundled out-game Ultra Beast with a new game, Sonic the Hedgehog. The Japanese board of directors initially disapproved of the plan, but all 4 points were approved by Nakayama, who told Kalinske, "I hired you to make decisions for Europe and America, so go ahead and do it." Magazines praised Sonic as one of the greatest games yet made, and Sega's console finally took off as customers who had been waiting for the release of the international version of the Nintendo Super Famicom, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and SNES, decided to purchase a Genesis instead. So take that, Nintendo, you bully. Direct. Nintendo's console debuted against an estimated competitor, while NES's TurboGrafx 16 failed to gain traction, and NES soon pulled out of the market. In large part due to the popularity of Sonic the Hedgehog, the Genesis outsold the SNES in the United States nearly 2-1 during the 1991 holiday season. So, Nintendo might be getting beat out. I don't know, Burskies. Nintendo might be failing. You never know. Okay. The Genesis, The success led to Sega having control of 65% of the 16-bit console market in January 1992, making the first time Nintendo was not the console leader since December 1985. To compete with Nintendo, Sega was more open to new types of games than its rival, but still tightly controlled the approval process for third-party games and charged high prices for cartridge manufacturing. Technicians from American third-party game video game publishers Electronic Arts reverse engineered the Genesis in 1989. The following nearly 1 year of negotiations with Sega, in which EA requested a more liberal licensing agreement than was standard in the industry before releasing its game for the system. The Crane Room reverse engineering was read by Steve Hayes and Jim Nichols, lasting several months before EA secretly began game development. EA founder Trip Hawkins confronted Nakayama with this information one day prior to the 1990 Consumer Electronics Shows, aka CES, noting that EA had the ability to run its own wrestling program if Sega refused to meet its demands. Sega relented, and the next day, EA's upcoming Genesis games were showcased at CES. EA signed that Hawkins described as a very unusual and more enlightened license agreement with Sega in June 1990. Among other things, we had to make as many titles as we had the right to make as many titles as we wanted. We could approve our own titles. The royalty rates were a lot more reasonable. We also had more direct control over manufacturing. After the deal was in place, EA chief creative officer Bing Gordon learned that we hadn't figured out all the workarounds, and Sega still had the ability to walk us out, noting it would just have been a public relations fiasco. EA released its first two Genesis games, Populous and Budokan: The Martial Spirit, within the month. The first version of EA's John Madden Football arrived at the end of 1990 and became what Gordon called a killer app for the system. Taking advantage of the licensing agreement, Gordon and EA's Vice President of Marketing Services, Nancy Fong, created a visual identifier for EA's Genesis cartridges, a yellow tab molded into the cartridge casing on their left side. Sega was able to outsell Nintendo 4 Christmas seasons in a row due to the Genesis having a 2-year lead. A lower price point, the Sega had 10 games for every game on the SNES. While SNES had exclusive versions of Final Fight, one of Sega's internal development teams created Streets of Rage, which had bigger levels, tougher enemies, and a well-regarded soundtrack. Streets of Rage is the funnest game ever. It's probably my favorite Genesis game out there. I'm not gonna lie. I know Sonic the Hedgehog is good too, but this game, boy, it's something pretty special. I like it. Actually, I'm on Sega Forever Mobile on my mobile phone, so I play it a lot. I really enjoy the game. It's fun. All right. All right. ASCII Entertainment reported in early 1993 that Genesis had 250 games versus 75 for the SNES, but limited shelf space meant that stores typically offered 100 Genesis and 50 SNES games, and NES was still the leader with 300 games and 100 on shelves. So, NES is still doing pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie. Sega's advertising positioned the Genesis as the cooler console and coined the term blast processing as an obscure and unused graphics programming method to suggest that its processing capabilities were far greater. Far greater than those of the SNES. The Sony focus group found that teenage boys would not admit to owning an SNES rather than a Genesis, which I'm a teenage boy, okay? I admit I don't have an SNES. I hate it. I don't have an SNES. I'm not gonna admit it either. I'm not gonna admit it. That's so weird. Okay, Nintendo and Sega both focused heavily on impression management of the market, even going to the point of deception with the Nintendo equipment that sold more consoles in 1991 than it actually had. And forecasting it would sell 6 million consoles by the end of 1992, while its actual U.S. install base at the end of 1992 was just more than 4 million units. You stinking jerk wires, Nintendo. Due to these tactics, it was difficult to ascertain a clear leader in the market share for several years at a time. With Nintendo dollar share of U.S. 6-bit market dipping down from 60% at the end of 1992 to 37% at the end of 1993, Sega claimed 55% of all 16-bit hardware sales during 1994, and Donkey Kong Country, helping the SNES outsell the Genesis from Oh, wait. Okay, holy cow, there's been a lot of interruptions, I apologize. Where were we? Alright, so, in Donkey Kong Country, helping the SNES outsell the Genesis from 1995 through 1997. According to a 2004 study of NPD sales data, Genesis was able to maintain its lead over the Super NES in America's 16-bit console market. However, according to a 2014 Wedbush Securities report based on the revised NPD sales data, the SNES outsold the Genesis in the U.S. market. Alright, now we're going into the main character, Sonic the Hedgehog. Alright. Sega held a company-wide contest to create a mascot character to compete with Nintendo's Mario series. Okay, the winning submission was a blue hedgehog with red shoes, Sonic, created by Naihito Oshimaya, spawning one of the best-selling video game franchises in history. The gameplay of Sonic the Hedgehog originated with a tech demo created by Yuji Naka, who had developed a prototype platform game that involved a fast character rolling the ball through a wide winding tube. This concept was developed with Oshima's character design and level was conceived by designer Haruo Kazuya Eshiriya. So, that was just about it on the Genesis. But there's also some other stuff such as add-ons that and handheld consoles. But I'm pretty sure the next thing that we're going to learn about is the Game Gear, is what we're going to be talking about next episode. So, sorry for all the interruptions, but hope everyone has a great day today. It's going to be the weekend soon, if you think about it. But trying to put these out every day, so make sure you subscribe. This has been episode. Actually, have a great day, and I will see everybody later. This has been episode 6, season 1 of Game Collectors with your host, Isaac Idawg. I'll see everybody in the next video. Idawg, out.